I'm sure you listened to the speech by the CBN Governor. What would you make of it? What were your first thoughts? And were there some highlights you were hoping to see and that you didn't get to see? What exactly are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, thank you very much. I listened to the speech, I read the speech, and it came with a mixed reaction as usual, the positive side, the negative side. He who wears the shoe understand where it pinches more. We as analysts can speak from the outside, but those that are inside understand better. Because there are some areas that we felt that we looked at the things that they've done and we asked ourselves, are they really working in line with the monetary policy? We saw the areas where the current governor, Cardoso, castigated some of the policies of the last administration under Emefiele, and some of the things that they actually did not do right. But on its own, we look at some of the things that he has brought out, and we had one or two that we consider that until when he's out of the game, people too will pick on it. But by and large, I think it's a balanced speech, but some of us had our fears, looking at some of the highlights that you have said, most especially in terms of MPC meetings, knowing the importance of it, the area of stability of our foreign exchange, which is the primary focus of CBN, and also inflation, because both things are of the monetary policy. And when these are not done well, it affects the fiscal policy, which in turn affect the economy, and average citizen may really not, enjoy what they are supposed to enjoy. But by and large, it's a 50-50 speech to me, of which we expect that when we start implementing some of these things, it's not about the speech, it's about the implementation. When we start implementing it, we start having a feel of what those things are supposed to be and whether they are done in the right way.
Very well, Mr. Olusesan. Now, let's go to the recent stress test on the Nigerian financial service sector. What are your thoughts on it? Because some financial institutions have come to commend the CBN governor for the fact that for the plan to further recapitalize deposit money banks in the country. And the last time we had issues with recapitalization was during the time of Charles Soludo in 2004, where he moved the capital base from 2 billion to 25 billion. And now we're having $1 trillion capital base. What do you make of that? How would banks, realize this amount of, this said amount, so to speak?
Yeah, the development is in the right direction. If you look at 2004 till now, a lot of development has actually happened, in the sense that our banks are struggling to compete with other colleagues globally. And it's necessary that recapitalization must hold. But part of the things we have tried to ask is the transparency in terms of the recapitalization. A lot is going to impact on the banks. You might see some consolidating, some mergers happening, but you discover that the fewer if they are able to meet the obligation of the citizen that they actually banked for, I think it's better. When you look at the stress test, I think it's more on the payment platform, which we saw the CBN governor spoke to during his speech. One of the things that caught my attention, which I'm really not too encouraged about, is where is the e-Naira that we saw during the last administration being promoted by CBN in order to have a safe transfer. You discover that was not spoken about. What we had is that they are going to strengthen it in such a way that we can have a robust, operation being carried out by the commercial bank. But I feel that in Naira, we saw it as a game changer in which people can use, at least compete with some of the things that we have as independent one that can globally be used as different from the individual ones that the banks are actually looking at. So I, as an individual, was of the opinion that we should have strengthened the e-Naira platform, which we consider as a platform created by the CBN under the government, as against the individual ones that we consider certain failure. So if mass investment is given to that, it will be strengthened in such a way to minimize the failure which we are expecting, which we are experiencing on some of the platform that the individual banks are actually investing in. And that on its own, with much plugged in, can assist to reduce the cost on the banks, and the government can actually shoulder that to make sure that we have delivery. But I know that the banks have their reservation, because most of the things that have been handled by the government most of the time do fail because of what you and I understand, the area of corruption. But be it as it may, he has given the word that they are going to strengthen the operation of some of the online platform to make sure that we reduce the cash transaction, knowing the security threat entrenched with this, and the cost of even printing some of those currency in such a way that we can minimize cash movement or cash transaction and ride more on online operation. And bulk of that thing that they just need to do is to work on the security, because we discovered that a lot of people are being swindled, of their hard-earned money because of lack of exposure or lack of, enlightenment on the part of the regulator on individuals. So if some of these things are actually strengthened, you discover that
very well, Mr. Olusesan. What do you think of the $1 trillion capital base? Do you think it's a little too ambitious? Before you answer that, let's go on a quick break. Let's listen to the speech itself. We'll be right back.
With a growth rate of 0.67% in October compared to 0.97% previously. While absolute inflation is still rising, the declining rate of growth indicates progress. The CBN is confident that with continued tightening measures for the next 2 quarters, they will be able to effectively manage inflation. Distinguished guests, I am aware that events over the past few years have also put the CBN in bad light. These issues can be attributed to various factors, such as corporate governance failures, diminished institutional autonomy of the Central Bank of Nigeria, a deviation from the core mandate of the bank, unorthodox use of monetary tools, an inefficient and opaque foreign exchange market that hindered clear access, a foray into fiscal activities under the cover of developmental finance activities. And there was also a lack of clarity in the relationship between fiscal and monetary policies, amongst other challenges. Hitherto, the CBN has strayed from its core mandate and was engaged in quasi-fiscal activities that pumped over 10 trillion naira in the economy through almost different initiatives in sectors ranging from agriculture, power, and many others. These clearly distracted the bank from achieving its own objectives and took it into areas which it had limited expertise. Distinguished guests, under my leadership, the Central Bank of Nigeria will vigorously address these issues. We will tackle institutional deficiencies, restore corporate governance, strengthen regulations, and implement prudent policies. We assure investors and the business community that our economy will experience significant stability in the short to medium term as we recalibrate our policy toolkits and implement far-reaching measures.
I was talking about this issue of the CBN directing banks to increase their capital base. What do you make of it? Do you think this would bring about the merging of banks in order to meet up with the $1 trillion capital base? What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's a good step in the right direction, if I must say. And like you said, it's going to be an atmosphere where they will have to go to come out again for IPO, which is a public offer for people to invest in them. And those that are able to meet up with the set standard, you might see them having talk with one another in the aspect of merger. And there will also be acquisition in such a way that some of the assets of the smaller ones might actually be taken over. So these are part of the things that happen when the capitalization happened. Remember, before we had it in 2004, we have banks that were as much as 80-something and were reduced to 25. So maybe after this recapitalization, you might discover that we'll end up having like 10 or 12 that will actually stand the global competition that is actually being experienced, globally, and provide the necessary service. So mergers, acquisition, and public offer is inevitable for them to do during this period of recapitalization. But what we request or require of them is transparency on the part of those that will carry it out.
What implication would this merging or merger be on the economy? What would be the impact of it on the average Nigerian on the street?
Yeah, well, the impact will be enormous. At least there will be more liquidity for the banks to play over, and there will be security of the funds of some of the deposits in the bank. So these are some of the guarantees that you definitely have. Now you have more money, you'll be able to trade with it, you'll be able to do what is needful to grow the economy. So an average citizen would definitely benefit more if we have the recapitalization. I'm sure you know the banks are able to delve into a lot of activities when they were recapitalized in 2004. And the dividend of some of those things are things that we saw investment in the online platform and some other things that have enhanced their deliverable. I'm sure I can't remember the last time I visited the bank physically, and I know same is obtainable to you. You do so many of your transactions via online platform, of which we believe that if they recapitalize, we can have more security to really have confidence, in carrying out some of those transactions, and they'll be better off for it. So it's to the good and the growth of business owners if some of these banks are actually recapitalized.
Okay. So the CBN governor highlighted so many challenges in Nigeria, such as inflation, the global economy, international issues such as the war in Ukraine, and now the Israeli-Hamas crisis and all of that. what impact do you think all of this is playing with regards to the economy of Nigeria?
It's actually playing a lot, and it's a wake-up call. It's for us to see how we can domesticate a lot of things that we are actually importing. As a nation, I don't think we are the only OPEC nation that is actually importing the finished product of what we have. Majority of the OPEC nation process their crude oil, sell it out to the neighboring nation. So you can imagine if Nigeria is refining its own product, to have domestic sufficiency and will be able to take care of the West Africa market, of which they are actually buying their own product to, even from the developed world. So this is a key. Part of the things we have actually been advocating for is how we can have the processing arm, of which we need a strong financial institution to provide funds in such a way that once we are able to have the processing arm and the end users are actually there, we have the population to our advantage, which we definitely give a cheap cost of labor, when it comes to you talking about manpower and the natural resources, the accessibility to those things are actually there. So if you have a strong financial institution to make provision of funds in carrying out those things, the economy will definitely be better for it. We really need to be more productive, because currently the crisis that is happening everywhere, in fact, COVID exposed a lot of those things, and that's why you see a lot of economy are domesticating the things that they are doing, what they can produce for themselves, consume for themselves, and export the excess to generate more revenue, rather than we, being import dependent, as stated by CBN Governor, which is putting so much pressure on the little revenue that we are generating. Don't forget that energy, crude oil tech has produced a revenue on its own too. So we are not generating as much of the dollars that is expected, but we'll definitely, if you're able to control this and produce some of those things locally, we'll reduce the pressure that we have on foreign exchange, and the dividend of governance expected of the citizen will definitely be made provided to them.
Very well, Mr. Olusegun. Now let's look at the unemployment rate in Nigeria. That was also highlighted in the speech by the CBN Governor. What would you say would be the impact of this whole issue on ground? What would be the impact on the employment rate in Nigeria? Would it create more job opportunities for Nigerians? How exactly would it impact us? Like in very clear terms, how would it really impact unemployment in Nigeria?
Yeah, if we are able to get the monetary and the fiscal policy right, it's going to impact greatly. You see, part of the things we have said is that the multinationals can always have their way, but empower the startup and the entrepreneur in such a way that they are able to grow their business successfully. And how will you carry out this? By having an enabling environment, basic infrastructure that is expected of us. You can imagine if the cost of power is reduced, most people will have the benefit of doing so much as an individual. If you have the cost of the infrastructure being put together, like you and I are doing, how many people do you want to have physically present in your studio? I'm sure a lot will be billing you when they consider the cost of moving their vehicle to your studio. But if you enhance this aspect of online platform in such a way that the internet are very good and very strong, just like the CNN and the other big multimedia houses are doing, same will be applicable. So a lot of people will stay at the comfort of their home, give analysis, do what is needful without impacting or putting pressure on the road. So we discovered that if they are able to get the fiscal policy, the monetary policy right, of which we can see that the Presidential Task Force on the fiscal policy and taxation are also working on relieving the burden, which is in the area of multiple taxation, the economy will be better off for it. I think we need to empower more the startup and the middle level entrepreneur in such a way that they're able to create more employment. I'm sure that if you have your own creativity of things you can do, Maybe after work on a daily basis, you set up a small thing that you have one or two people working behind the scene for you. You have created employment one way or the other. But situation where you are even struggling to survive as an individual, it becomes a very daunting task for you to achieve.
How can the banking system address the impact of high inflation on asset quality? And are there any specific measures, that can be taken to mitigate the risk by the depreciation of Naira, for domestic banks with foreign exchange exposure?
Minimal thing can actually be done by the commercial bank. The major role lies with the central bank, and is part of some of the things that we have discussed earlier, by having the right policy in place, and as regulator be able to monitor the activities of the commercial bank. Little can they do in regulating the things that has to do with foreign exchange, because the CBN determine, foreign exchange is based on demand and supply, and they all have a central pool where they pull from, which is a CBN. So the bulk of it still lies on the aspect of CBN doing what is needful and what is right in such a way that the banks on their own can do what is needful. They need proper regulation, proper monitoring, in such a way that the citizen can have the confidence that is expected in them. You see, there are a lot of round tripping that is going on when it comes to foreign exchange. How much of penalty are we seeing from CBN on some of these people perpetrating this ill, affecting us? So we feel more that the CBN has a lot to do, because they are the regulator of of the commercial banks, the money deposit bank. And if a lot is not done on their part, what we'll be having is what we are having currently, which is a gap, and it will be impacting on average citizen and business owners.
All right, now speak a little bit on the highlights that states that there will be the adoption of inflation target framework with details being finalized. How is this being done? And secondly, the new foreign exchange guidelines and legislative framework. How will the CBN ensure that policymakers and business people adhere to all of these requirements?
First and foremost, I said it the other time, that it's not about policy formulation alone. If you go out, I'm sure they are just going to rejig what we have on ground currently and bring it out for us to make use of. What we lack is area of implementation and proper monitoring when those things, those policy formulated, are being implemented. We don't monitor some of the activity. We create the gap that an average citizen just capitalized on and exploits people. Those are areas I think that the central bank needs to work on, in making sure that proper monitoring is carried out on the commercial and the DMS, the deposit money bank, in such a way that they provide the requisite services expected of them to business owner, and break bureaucracy that are actually being created on the part of business owner for you to grow. If you're able to have a smooth financial operation as a business owner, definitely you have more businesses to do, and on its own, you will contribute to the economy by growing large and creating more employment for people to do. And when we have employment and we have people being engaged, you discover that on its own will tame the inflation that we are embarking upon currently. So I feel much work needs to be done by CBN. A lot is on their table, and the time is ticking, because a lot of us are monitoring the activity. Some of those policies that they're actually bringing out, we want timeline for it, and let's see, proper enlightenment and proper monitoring when they bring those things out. That on its own will assist and aid the delivery that is expected of them as the financial institution regulator.
Nicely put. So, Mr. Olusegun, do you have final thoughts you would like to share concerning this CBN governor's speech? But I would also like to hear your thoughts on the final highlight I took note of. It says no more monetary policy committee meeting for the rest of 2023. I mean, shouldn't these meetings be due to the fact that there are economic challenges that need to be addressed? Why should it be restricted to 4 times? Why 4 times in a year? Shouldn't it be as many times as possible to ensure that the economy is going well? What do you have to say about that? Just add that to your final thoughts and let's wrap up.
Yeah, on the aspect of the MPC meeting, I think it's been done quarterly, and the essence of it, like I said in my deliverable, is to be able to review the economic and financial condition of the economy and the financial condition of the economy, and that on its own give direction. That's where you state what the interest rate should be, considering for the next 3 months that will guide you. You might just peg it at a particular thing, but the forces that are actually worked around inflation and foreign exchange might reduce it. But you can have a projection as business owner of what the government is actually looking through, and how you can infuse that into your own planning as an individual. So I think that the monetary policy quarterly meeting is important, but be that it may, as this for this year has actually been shifted and to hold next year, let's just be religious about it so that we can give direction even to business owner. And on a final note for me, the government should have the intentional act to do what is needful. The regulators should do their work in making sure that they monitor the activities of the financial institution. You see, when you have ideas, when you have creativity, you rely on the financial institution to provide the finances in executing some of those projects, and let government be intentional in domesticating some of the things that we have, knowing fully well that we are blessed with the natural resources, we have the human capital to do it. As we are looking at the aspect of recapitalization, the financial institutions are out there, but let's have the political will on the part of our leaders to make sure that we enjoy some of the things that God has endowed us with, and the dividend of good governance for the betterment of the citizen. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.